Aloha and welcome to another video for IS 330 Management Information Systems. This video is all about the midterm for the winter 2010 semester. What types of things do you need to know for this exam? Okay, I know you're all looking forward to it and that this is going to be the best exam experience you've ever had. I've worked on this, I've thought about it, and hopefully you'll really enjoy it. Now that being said, it's going to be challenging hopefully not because you don't know the material, but because there's a lot to do in just an hour. So in this brief 10-minute video, or less, I'd like to go over some of the main things that I expect you to be able to do during the midterm. Okay, let's start. We talked earlier in the class about industries, looking at industries and using Michael Porter's 5 forces model to understand the environment in which a given organization competes. So you should be familiar with the 5 forces. Okay, so a rivalry among competitors, bargaining power of suppliers, bargaining power of customers or buyers, the barriers to entry, and the just slipped my mind, threat of substitutions. And so you should understand what those are and be able to, if you pick an industry, um, any industry you'd like, and you should be able to describe, well, what are those forces? How are they doing? I'm not going to ask you about the whole strong and weak force thing because that was a bit hard to understand from the textbook. But I do want you to be able to say, okay, for example, in the airline industry, the bargaining power of suppliers is influenced by the fact that there's only 2 major airplane manufacturers in the world, Boeing and Airbus, and so there's a significant influence there that you need to be aware of, and you should know that you should be able to tell or think about whether or not these forces are changing. Okay, for example, are we seeing more entry into the space of, say, airplane manufacturers? Okay, or is it just kind of remaining constant? So you should be able to think about those types of things. You should be able to understand um, each of those 5 forces as they relate to a given industry that you're familiar with. Okay. Following that, you should also be aware that so
Yes.
going through the
Next one is
competitive
improving on your.
strategies.
Sorry, my husband is.
Okay, sorry about that. Um, okay, so the next thing is competitive strategy. Okay, what do you need to know? You should know what the different competitive strategies are, and be able to recommend whether a company should take a differentiation-based approach or a cost-based approach or a focus-based approach to competition. Okay, and be able to explain why, given a certain set of industry characteristics. Okay, then I want you to be familiar with the value chain activities. Okay, so given a certain business, you should be able to describe what its value chain activities are. Now, in review, the value chain activities, you should know what inbound logistics are, operations, outbound logistics, sales and marketing, and service and support. So be able to pick an industry of your choice or business of your choice and describe. Say, I'm in the cookie making business. What would be an example of my inbound logistics activities? What would be an example of my operations? What would be an example of outbound logistics for this industry? If I'm in higher education and I run a university, what's an example of inbound logistics? What is my operations? What's my production function? How do I do sales and marketing and service and support? What does that involve? So being able to describe those and provide an example of each of those activities. Okay. Then you should be able to also describe a business process that's part of one of these activities, these value chain activities. So just pick one and work through and say, okay, if this is the inbound logistics activity for this industry that I'm considering, then here's if I'm making cookies and part of it is receiving or taking care of the inbound logistics and bringing all the inputs into my cookie manufacturing plant, then what I might end up with is a description of a business process that is part of receiving goods that are ordered and updating those books. And so the receiving function that you might see at the dock is part of the inbound logistics. So being able to describe a business process that supports one of these value chain activities or is part of one of these value chain activities. So then I want you to take that process and describe it in terms of its activities, resources, facilities, and the information involved in that process. So this is just taking if you could pick a business process and be able to identify what its four basic components are. Okay. Then, now that we've talked about strategy and competition and value chain activities and business processes, I want you to look at that business process and I want you to be able to say, well, how could an information system be used to help support this process? Okay. So describe an information system. So we talk about the receiving ordered ingredients from my cookie factory. How could we use an information system to support that receiving process? What hardware devices would I need? What software would I need? Where would I get this software? Is this horizontal software, vertical software? What data would need to be collected as part of this information system? And thinking about in terms of the data fields that we had to input into either a spreadsheet or a database, the things like the column headers. Okay, what types of data would you need to capture or keep track of or process as part of this system? And I want you to be able to figure out, well, would we store this data in a spreadsheet or a database? And be able to explain why. Okay, so as you can kind of see, we're working through in this example and touching on the pieces of how information systems can support business processes, and then being able to identify the characteristics of this information system. Okay, so we've gone through hardware, software, and data, and then we get into processes. I want you to think about with this information system that you're describing, how automated will this business process be in this information system? Will it be useful to fully automate something, or should it be semi-automated? You should be able to understand the differences in automation and be able to justify an automation decision. Okay. Lastly, I want you to think about the collaboration exercise for Chapter 6. Okay. What do you need to know? What have you been thinking about and working toward? We've talked a lot in collaboration exercise Chapter 6 about emerging technologies in wireless networking, such as WiMAX, LTE, other 4G technologies, and the ability to effectively create giant wireless hotspots around a town or a metropolitan area. And I want you to be able, and you should be able to think about what effect this is going to have on business. So I want you to be able to think about, will these emerging technologies change any competitive forces in a given industry? Okay. Will it change business processes that are part of a value chain activities for the business? So trying to get thinking about what will this change, and finally, what business opportunities will exist as part of these changes. Okay. So being able to identify that, will there be opportunities to increase efficiency? Will this change the way a company does business? Would it allow a company to provide new services to employees or customers? So think about that. So basically, the concepts I want you to be able to understand for the midterm are being able to apply what we've covered in the first half of the semester. You've gone through 6 chapters of the textbook, understanding information systems, their role in helping companies achieve their goal, and how those information systems can support an organization's efforts to be competitive and to identify business opportunities to help them achieve their goals, and to be able to describe an information system that can do so. And finally, in looking at emerging technologies and understanding how these emerging technologies can change the things that influence the way that we design information systems and recognize opportunities that are created by them. If you have any questions, please let me know. And I hope you really enjoy this exam. It's going to be a lot of fun. Mahalo.